Hello, I am here to finally bring to a close my LEGO Star Wars sequel trilogy retrospectives. This time, it's the minifigures. Most of the world is moving on, or has moved on, from the sequel trilogy, including Lucasfilm itself, including LEGO itself. We will be getting a handful of additional sequel trilogy related items in the future, including just a couple weeks after the release of this video here, the official release of the little 4+ Resistance X-Wing fighter, the super simple version. So there will be more figures in the future to add to this, but this is the overwhelming majority of it, and most of it has come to a close now. There are three groups of minifigures here, as I've put them together based on the movie that they were released to go with. So these are all Force Awakens figures here, or went with Force Awakens sets. And you can see that 32 by 32 plate that they are on is fairly tightly packed. I had to redo it a handful of times to get them all to fit. That was quite an impressive number. However, as soon as we get over to the Last Jedi stuff that we're starting to look at right now, the numbers go down dramatically. Now, obviously, in hindsight, that was a good idea to not put out as much stuff for The Last Jedi, as The Last Jedi did not do as well, did not do so well in general. In theaters, it was okay, but it wasn't that loved by the fans. Things started to go downhill in that sense. And then finally we get over to the Rise of Skywalker, and over there, I was just able to space these things out a lot, and I still had plenty of space towards the back. I'm going to try to look at some of the groups of figures as well that kind of belong together. I'm not going to take them apart from this general categorization too much. I do want to keep this separation between the movies, but there are some additional things that we can look at together and to compare. The Force Awakens lot, to be honest with you, is pretty dang strong in breadth and in depth, and it really gives you a cross-section and representation of how much Force Awakens itself was a love letter to the original trilogy and to fans of the original trilogy. You can see it all here. We've got our classic TIE fighter pilots. We've got our Death Star gunners, of course, plenty of stormtroopers. Those continued on through. We've got our snow troopers. We've got helmeted rebel figures, right, to do ground warfare. We've got some helmeted rebel pilots. I know they're not rebels, they're resistance here and stuff, but it's all here. You got some folks with lightsabers. You got bad guys and good guys. You got the in-betweens. You've got your quintessential droids. They even brought back something from the prequel trilogy there, just as a little extra nod. Made that into a complete thing. So yeah, this is strong. It even commemorates and immortalizes some unforgettable moments. This one comes with the elder Princess Leia, R.I.P. Carrie Fisher, and in universe, R.I.P. Han Solo. Came with the gray-haired Han Solo. You got him in two different cases there, and it even had a Mon Calamari. Keep in mind that back when The Force Awakens came out, we didn't know exactly what was going to happen in the future of the sequel trilogy with respect to who was going to end up wielding lightsabers and such. It was pretty obvious that Rey was being set up to be one of the heroes, but we didn't know if she was going to be the only one. And in 4 sets that included her, we only got her in one version of her garb. Of course, this one also had the headgear piece, but this was what I consider to be Rey the Brown, using the Tolkien analogy. But then look at this. Against 4 instances of Rey figures, we got 4 Finn figures, including one of them appropriately wielding a lightsaber. That was a big deal back then. And remember, we didn't know. We didn't know if Finn was actually going to be a major character, was going to end up being a Force wielder throughout the remainder of the series. We didn't know that character was basically going to be squandered and wasted. Let's not forget Maz Kanata, who was hiding behind a flame trooper there. This is the only figure that we got of her, and this was a much loved, much respected character, and well played on screen, well voiced, and had a lot of mystique and had a lot of potential that, again, we didn't know was basically going to be not used at all, but it was an interesting setup, and we got a good figure for it in Lego form. I feel a pattern emerging here, and I have to say I was not planning on this when I started this video, because here's another figure of a character that didn't go nearly as far as we had hoped and expected. Captain Phasma really stood out as the Silver Stormtrooper, and a special one at that. Captain level, we got the silver on silver printing for this one. Really cool. Also the silver blaster and the specialized cape piece that was produced pretty nicely with that thin red line around it. A little bit of tattering towards the edge. This is, this is something special. We did get one more Captain Phasma, but it was not the same as this. But man, a lot of fans were really looking forward to what would become of Captain Phasma based on, the in-universe character and also the toys. Looking now at all of the Force Awakens figures, I have to call out Teedo as one of my favorites. I did not expect this either, but it just really stands out as a well-produced figure with a really interesting headgear piece that was completely unique, only ever used for this one character. It's dual molded, and then it has pretty good printing as well. Color scheme brings in that olive color as well, including for the hands. And yeah, I think this was one of the better ones just overall. Not the most memorable character, but as a figure, this is good. The Guavians also deserve a place in history, I think. That's just one of the most unique headpieces, and it just screams at you from across the room. The big old target, the bullseye or target logo kind of face. And I like the ridging, the relatively subtle details around the back where it's just black and satin, but it's a nice level of detail. And the printing is good as well on this one. It's just too bad that these did come with the stud shooters, but at least they were used as launchers, so that kind of makes some sense and works a lot better than just putting a plain stud shooter in a figure's hand and saying, hey, it's a blaster. No, really. I'm going to call out Unkar Plutt as one of my least favorite figures from the series, and I am a little bit biased there because, for one thing, I was expecting this character in universe, just based on how it looked, to be much larger than it actually is. It's a human-sized character, and that just feels disappointing to me. So no fault of Lego there, but when I look at, again, the entire plate worth of figures, just this one in its face, I don't know, it was actually printed pretty well here. Like, that's some very opaque printing for the skin tone for the face. That's all printed on, that's all just actual paint applied over plastic. But it just feels a little bit blobby to me. It feels a little bit flat. Just not my favorite, personally speaking. Before I move on, I should of course touch on Kylo Ren as the one major main bad guy that we know of as of The Force Awakens. We got only 3 Kylo Rens. It's a little bit conservative. They could have flooded us with those, but they didn't. I'm glad for that. They offered them up with just the most basic minifig form. He also had a version with the cape on the back, and then we also had the opportunity to put a hood on him that was open, and one of those also came with an additional helmet piece. That helmet piece looks like an orangutan to me. Funny that it ended up getting worked on by a chimpanzee, a space chimpanzee, later on. But I personally thought that was not a good design. It was too comical, but it grew on me over time. It doesn't bother me anymore. It bothered me back then. Lastly, BB-8s. Anyone? Got a miniature yard sale of those. Let's take a second to just look at this entire selection of Last Jedi figures here, because what stands out? First and foremost, the big red in the middle, right? The Praetorian Guards, those were super cool on screen. So cool. Lego only gave us 2 of them in the biggest set where they really belonged, the Snoke's Throne Room set, but eventually they came out with the battle pack that allowed us to complete it. That wasn't so great, though. I really wish they had given us the entire set. Although, again, some really cool character design that was squandered. They were just killed off in the movie basically as soon as they showed up. That was unfortunate. What else stands out here? What else is important here? A lot of black here, including 3 Kylo Rens. More of these gunner dudes and just general kind of background cannon fodder that I think a lot of fans don't care about. We tend to go more for the mainline troopers. These do work out well for some dioramas. They give you definitely some nice contrast with that black color. And speaking of black color, of course, they introduced the evil version of BB-8, BB-Hate, many of us call him, or Darth Ball, I called him. What else? Just looking at color, Holdo stands out to me, and I have much respect for the Holdo maneuver. I thought that was an absolute triumph of a scene. I feel like the hate that this character got was just completely unwarranted, especially when we had the main bad guy's badder version and master who was pulling the strings. We had this guy, and he was just off almost as soon as he showed up. So talk about a waste. This guy right here. Two of them were made available in two separate sets in the Last Jedi selection over multiple waves. Luke Skywalker, though, this was a big deal. Old man Luke Skywalker, Mark Hamill coming back to the franchise officially. That was such a big deal. Now, a number of fans out there did not like what was done with the Luke Skywalker character in universe in The Last Jedi, and I respect that. I respect that opinion, even if I feel that opinion is wrong. I'm just kidding. We can all have our own opinions. It's all good. But to me, Luke Skywalker coming back in modern days, on screen and as a toy here, that was represented pretty well. Also, this being the good one was made available in a good set, I felt. That was just awesome. Rose and Finn in Imperial disguises, on the other hand, not so awesome on screen. However, I am going to call out this blue Rose figure here as one of my favorite figures in the Last Jedi series. It's just that dark blue. The production work here is really nice, and the hat in particular, or the headgear piece with the hat or cap and the hair, it just, I don't know, it's just nicely shaped, stands out well. I really wished that they had come out with a version of that headgear piece with that color, but without the hair. So they did it in the gunmetal gray for Finn and one other figure, but the blue, I feel, needed to be finished out, needed to be brought in as an option for folks who want to do interesting dioramas, you know, inside of stations, inside of ships and such. It's different, and I think it was a good thing. Speaking of differences, this was interesting. Amongst the Last Jedi set releases, we got both original version Stormtrooper helmets and updated Stormtrooper helmets. So this is the Last Jedi and Beyond version with the different, clearly different smile. So this, or frown in this case. So this guy, depending upon how you looked at him, looked like he was smiling quite widely. You know, just had a little bit of frown in the center, but then big smile around. And they tried to accentuate the seriousness and the frown part of it in The Last Jedi. And that was a change that was made in universe, you know, or at least on screen, and you can see it very clearly. Just like changes were made to the original Stormtroopers from movie to movie. They were a little bit more subtle than this, but yeah, we did get both of these during the releases of just this one movie. For The Last Jedi, we also got a second Captain Phasma with the updated design. Now, I feel like that's unfortunate that that one was changed. I mean, just mainline troops can be changed, you know, outfits will change and all, but I feel like Phasma's helmet was unique in universe. Like there was only one of those, you know, as far as anybody was concerned. There were probably more of them, and, you know, it was more of a class of things, but on screen, that original character as she showed up was unique. And so to change that style felt a little bit extra awkward to me. And between these two figures, so this is the Force Awakens version that you saw a few minutes ago, I like the Force Awakens version better, significantly, even though I feel like the production work here is really good for the helmet. You know, it's really done crisply with the lines and all, which I tend to like almost universally, but just here, that face, that just looks more like Phasma to me. And this one looks a little bit more generic as some sort of cyborg or something. Or maybe even an old school pre-Mandalorian Death Trooper sort of design. Not that that's a bad thing or anything, but yeah, I just have a personal preference for this. Nothing else was changed on her though. Before I move on, LEGO made Rey available 3 times for The Last Jedi, and 2 of those times were as Rey the Grey, to continue the Tolkien wizard analogy. Sorry, it just fits too perfectly, especially when you see the last one. These are identical figures between them. I felt like this was a better looking figure overall, and I don't know, just a little bit more timeless for some reason. To be consistent, I'm once again going to pick a least favorite figure, and I'm choosing this generic Resistance Trooper figure without the chin strap piece. Like you could see, a couple of them did get that chin strap piece, and this just ended up looking relatively plain to me. And of course, I've got to mention the Porgs, so there, I've mentioned them. And I did not get the Ultimate Collector Series Millennium Falcon, so I don't have that set's version of a Porg. And lastly, we get to the Rise of Skywalker. This looks kind of barren, even compared to the Last Jedi one. And I've spaced these out to try to make them, just a little bit more comfortable on the plate and everything. But yeah, this was a little bit sad. However, we did once again get a big bunch of red here, a bunch of bright red. Those were cool. The Sith troopers were more sort of useless troopers, but the character design, the outfit design is timeless. I don't care that they kind of squandered them like they squandered so many other things. I'm so glad that we got figures of these things, and I want to keep them forever. Okay, I am kind of upset right now, because I guarantee you, I promise you, I did not set out to make the theme of this entire video, oh, look at all these characters and figures and things that were squandered in universe. Here we have the Knights of Ren. They looked so cool, and they were so mysterious, and there was so much to want to know about them, and LEGO eventually did give us the entire series, although in order to get all of them, you had to buy a number of sets, and it was very expensive. I was not too happy about that. I was also not happy about the design of their ship, which could only carry a couple of them, a few at most, but that's neither here nor there. The figures were done pretty nicely, and they did create the entire series of them. I applaud that. I think that these are very interesting. I am glad that they did different helmet designs for them. They didn't cheap out on that at all. Those are unique molds, even though they may have just used a single mold with multiple pieces and kind of stacked them up in advance. But these are good, and I feel like they brought a lot of useful pieces to the LEGO universe, the LEGO world, the LEGO fan world, to use, if nothing else, as custom figures or custom figure parts. They're good things. They're good pieces of plastic. Now, there are two things on the screen right now that I particularly like. First of all, they brought back Lando. That was really cool. And they gave us one official LEGO minifigure for him. If you're a Lando fan, if you're an original trilogy fan, I just feel like that is a figure to cherish long term. The other thing that I really like here is the ugly sweater version of Poe Dameron. That came out with the Advent calendar, and that is a legit ugly sweater there with the BB-8 on it, just the print on that. That is collectible, if you ask me. That's definitely one that I'm going to hold on to. It's funny, but it's also kind of serious, and it's well done design. Back here is also a figure that I feel like you should hold on to if you have one. This was the character played by Billie Lourd, Carrie Fisher's daughter. So I feel like once all the hate for the sequel trilogies pass, and people forget about all the emotions, and everything kind of goes back to normal, I think a lot of fans are going to look back on this character very, very fondly, especially since we lost Carrie Fisher, to actually get her daughter on screen a couple times, was nice, and to get her as an official figure just seems like something with some real long-term emotional value. Dio, on the other hand, maybe not so emotional, but I thought the character personally was better in universe than I expected it to be. It was different, and LEGO did about as good as they could with this minifig-ish scaled version. And hey, Teal Astromech, come on, how can you say no to that? Returning to slightly more serious matters, we only got 2 regular First Order Stormtroopers for this entire movie, which just feels kind of wrong to me, just from the history of, Stormtroopers being the massable characters. Of course, we did get the Sith Troopers for this series instead, and, they weren't as useful on screen or anything. And one Flame Trooper and one Snow or Salt Trooper just feels weird to me. And then there were 3 releases of Rey the White. Final Evolution. It's interesting that just one of the ones that I got had the frosted lightsaber blade, just a little little vestige of the transition period as they went from the old polycarbonate material for transparents to the newer material that I guess puts out less toxins during its production. And they went back and forth, did some that were frosted, and they've actually gone back to being nice and clear. They also have no random air bubbles in them anymore, but the new material is not quite as clear as the original. Now, I know I'm not the only Star Wars fan who was really looking forward to some Boolio in The Rise of Skywalker after the trailer that featured him briefly. So big ups to LEGO for doing a proper Boolio here. That is one of the better head molds that they've done, and this is one of my favorite figures in this series, probably behind the regular Sith Trooper, but just the production work there is really nice, and it's, again, another case of just sadness and disappointment over what they did with the character. Not that they promised the world of it or anything, but seeing his head just thrown on the ground unceremoniously without the rest of him, it hurt. Here's another one of those sneaky rolling production changes that was made unexpectedly, and you'd be forgiven if you didn't notice it. I didn't notice it myself at first, but the headpiece for R2-D2 was changed during these times. Last up, I do want to pick my least favorite figure once again. From this group, I'm just not seeing any entire figure that is bad. I'm not seeing any figure that I would say should not have been done, could have been left off. They're all good. I mean, the teal Astromech is not particularly amazing, but it's teal, so it's safe. I'm just going to have to go with my gut here and call out the one that has an actual production little mistake on it. It's Jannah. Was it Jannah or Jannah? Jannah. Just that print right there at the top is not particularly good. It's fairly consistent across these, and right at the top of the shield, the blast shield style visor there, it's just not masked off well. So across all of these, at least all the ones that I've seen pictures of, they have that line between the tan and the black of the hair that is just really, really fuzzy. So I am going to call this out as my least favorite, even though it's a really good figure. I mean, the rest of the print is nice. The torso print there, okay, it doesn't have anything for the legs or the hip, so that's a negative, but then it has arm printing that's really good. Printing around the back of the torso is good also. So, yeah, not a bad figure, just I'm going to call it my least favorite because it has an error. And so it ends, huh? Again, this video did not go the way that I expected it to. I do not script these videos. I hardly ever script anything that I do for YouTube. I'm just speaking literally as you see things happening on screen, as you see me showing you, as you see my hands, as you see things panning by and whatnot. That's when I'm talking. It's basically in real time, just off the cuff, what I feel, what I think, And here, part of the experience of going back through all of this for me was reliving some of the memories of watching the films, of reviewing these things over the past 5, or over the 5 years that I was reviewing them and collecting them. And in some ways, seeing some of these with fresh-ish eyes. I have not looked at this entire collection together in quite some time. So being away from it, I feel, helps me to bring back a little bit of objectivity, in addition to having some of the more instinctual and just instant reactions, which in some cases are subjective as well. So, it kind of just clears the palate to step away from a thing for a while. So this was enjoyable for me in a geeking out kind of way. I hope it was enjoyable for you as well. For folks who don't know by now, for the sake of context, didn't want to put this at the beginning because it would have just slowed things down, but I liked the sequel trilogy, okay? I derived genuine entertainment value out of the entire sequel trilogy. I liked The Last Jedi, except for the Canto Bight whole diversion that was kind of useless in my opinion. I liked what they did with Luke Skywalker in The Last Jedi. I liked it a lot. I actually felt like they did that character dirty in The Rise of Skywalker by having him say I was wrong. It was very dismissive And it's fine for him to do that, you know, as a character, to say I was wrong. I mean, obviously he was wrong in The Last Jedi, and he was talking about he was wrong before, you know, so, okay, you know, minds change of character, that's okay. But yeah, so a lot of people hated The Last Jedi. I actually enjoyed it. Rise of Skywalker, I found it to be a very enjoyable film to watch, even though I hated the whole lazy Palpatine thing and strike me down, she will strike me down, and repeating so many quotes. Like, how many quotes are you going to directly, just out of the blue, you know, bring a lot of it was cringy, to be sure, but I still enjoyed it regardless. I'm not a Star Wars hater. I'm not a blind Star Wars 100% dedicated fanboy type of person either, you know. There's a lot of in between, and I'm in between. Overall, I'm happy with this stuff. Just generally speaking, I'm happy with the franchise. I'm happy with so many of these figures. I'm happy to have gone back through and had this experience of sharing this time with you. One last time before I finally put the rest of this behind me. You know, again, there will be a little bit more sequel trilogy stuff coming up from LEGO, and I will cover it, sure. But for the most part, you know, that the 5 years of collecting the sets, I still have all the sets. I kept them specifically to do this retrospective, and yeah, it was enjoyable. It was a nerdy thing that was good for the soul, at least for me. So let me know what you think. I would love to hear from folks what your favorites are out of these, even if you don't want to go specifically into movie by movie, you know, what your favorite figures were. Just pick a couple out of the entire thing that really strike you, or even groups of them. You know, if there was a certain class that you liked, you know, these particular, you know, Resistance troopers, or, you know, whatever. And also, I'm even more interested to hear what people choose as their least favorites out of all of these. You can go by film if you want to, but I'm just curious, because I feel like there are a lot more options to choose from for worst. You know, for things that would be the least liked, that would be the least memorable, or, you know, the most ugly, or, you know, the most hated, just in general. So yeah, I'm looking forward to hearing more of that as well. So I appreciate in advance any comments that you have, sharing your opinions, not just about the video, but about the content, you know, about the same stuff that I was talking about. All the Star Wars geeking out and nerding out is good, in my opinion. Thank you for watching, and I already said I hope you enjoyed this, didn't I? Well, if I didn't, I hope you enjoyed this. See you next time.